So we still are looking for reasonable causes of external cervical resorption. And in my opinion, we really have not found them yet. Every single study that it seems that we have published takes a population of people that have cervical resorption and then asks them questions about their history. That is not the same thing as a prospective study. And I believe that none of these studies have any useful information in them unless we also can contain the base rates of the factors that they're asking about. So this is very similar to the Hitherstay study, and this was published in 2017. And this is this group from Denmark, and they did the same thing as Hitherstay. They asked people with resorption, have you been to the orthodontist? Have you had trauma? Do you have parafunctional habits? They looked at their occlusion, and they looked at the neighboring teeth, and they found these percentages. And sure enough, a lot of them have been to the orthodontist. There were about a third of them that had trauma. And remember, as I said in the beginning of the lecture on trauma, about a third of everyone has trauma. So is it a significant thing to report? If sure enough, a third of the people with resorption have had trauma, it just means that they're a person. It doesn't mean that it had anything to do with the resorption. And we don't know what percentage of these patients that didn't have resorption had also had these things. So I actually called the author and said, where did you get this data? And she led me to this website. I think this is a Danish website. And I was trying to figure out what these things meant. I guess Tandarts is dentist, monohygienist, hygienist, orthodontist, that makes sense. And this is the usage of these various dental healthcare providers in the population. And so when we take a look, a lot of people have been to the dentist. That's good. And of course, not everyone, we know that. And the orthodontist, if you take a look, this is the light blue, not very many older people, but if you look at 12 to 16, turns out looks like somewhere around 50% have been to the orthodontist. So you have to conclude from this that a lot of people have been to the orthodontist, maybe that 45% that they had in their population of people with resorption. So that means it doesn't mean anything. It just means that they're a person in this community. Some significant things that came out of all this were that it's much more likely to be in maxillary teeth, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the ortho etiology because, it's a little bit easier to move maxillary teeth. Maybe we move them farther. We can ask the orthodontist about that. Again, 32% had trauma. We know that's just how it is. Restoration or crown and orthodontic treatment lower. But again, the whole idea is we're looking back at this study, not looking forward. So the prevalence of endodontic patients was 2.3%, and this was people that were referred to their endodontic clinic. And that is important because that's not a small number. And I have a feeling that in the suburban U.S. practice, it's much higher than that. And it is routine for someone to be sent to my office for routine treatment on a bicuspid. We take our CBCT and we see resorption on another tooth. The things that they were looked at there for systemic risk factors, diabetes may be significant. Again, we need to look into that more. Another interesting thing is cats get cervical root resorption a lot. And they do have this virus, this feline herpes virus type 1, that is associated with this increase in resorption in cats. So this one endodontist, Von Arx, I believe he is also in Denmark, took a look at this, and he found this rampant resorption. Now, this is another problem we have with resorption. I have never seen resorption that looks like this in the United States. So this is Scandinavian resorption, I believe. And what I see in the US, it's usually not both sides like this, and it will tunnel up and down. So maybe this is the type of resorption one would get from this feline herpes virus, but not what usually presents. So we tend to, like to group things together. So we group resorption together, and we just diagnose it by its location. Cervical resorption, all that means is it's at the neck of the tooth. It doesn't really have anything to do with the disease process or even how it's treated. And so again, this doesn't look like what we should be looking into because I've never seen this one. But in his case, he found a couple of patients. He tested them for this virus, and they had it. So now, we're in the habit of, asking people, do you have cats? And maybe there is something there in some cases. But I love this, and I see this often. This is an impacted third molar. This tooth has never been in the mouth. It has not had orthodontic treatment. It has not had trauma. It has not had restorative procedures. And it has invasive cervical resorption. There is resorption happening. And if you take a look carefully at CBCTs, you will see this in impacted wisdom teeth. So that to me just throws everything else out the window that we're looking for as possible causes and leads us back to that we don't know, and that maybe it has something more to do with how the tooth was mineralized.